Hello, welcome back to another episode of A Little Atypical. My name is Elijah, you can call me Lay, and as you can tell from the title, today we are focusing on shifting seasons. I know that I've been personally in a slow living period, and I kind of wanted to talk about shifting seasons with more of the focus of intentional living. It's actually a misconception that slow living and intentional living are the same thing. So that's what inspired this episode. I'm just gonna jump right in because this is gonna be a very casual talk-like episode. Okay, so to start off, we're gonna do a compare and contrast of intentional living versus slow living based on research I found. The summary of the chart says intentional living focuses on aligning actions with values and goals, can be practiced at any pace as it's more about alignment of actions, broad application affecting all aspects of life from work to personal growth, and encourages making conscious choices and prioritizing activities that bring fulfillment. Slow living, on the other hand, emphasizes a slower pace and savoring the moment, prioritizes reducing speed in life, often focuses on specific areas like consumption, leisure, and environmental sustainability, and lastly, encourages disconnecting from technology and focusing on simplicity and experiences over possessions. Okay, so I'm going to use examples from my own life. An example of a day of slow living, in my sense, was reading a book and spending all day reading a book. If I didn't have the energy, even though there was different things I wanted to do, sometimes you just don't have the energy or mental focus, and I still wanted to do something. So spending all day reading a book is the perfect example, enjoying the process of reading all day and without rushing. An example of intentional living is focusing on choosing hobbies and activities that contribute to personal growth and happiness. So in my case, an example of this would be when I decided to pick up jewelry making, specifically bracelet making, as a hobby, because I wanted a new way to be creative. And also with hand making things, I think that they are one of the best types of ways to decompress. I remember watching an episode of The Business Proposal, which is a K-drama, and it's the first K-drama I ever watched. So it holds a very special place in my heart, and I have rewatched it maybe like 8 or 9 times. I loved watching it. Anyways, one scene in it is about how the leading guy decompresses, and his way of doing so is cooking and cleaning. And then his friend goes, "You have a weird way of de-stressing." And then his response was, "How is it weird? I put in the work and I get exactly the results I want." So it's like visually seeing how much his work benefited him. So I just found that funny because with things like creating, physically creating, whether it's bracelet making or doing things like crocheting or even learning how to sew, that's kind of how I feel about those things, because like, yes, it's relaxing and it's like a skill development. Also, the ability to make your own things, like make your own accessories, make your own clothes, is something that you can physically get out of it. And I always found that very like fun and cool, and that's why there are so many hands-on creation things that I would want to learn how to do. But just starting with jewelry making and learning that I'm actually decent at it has been very much contributing to my way of being. For me personally, even though there has been moments I've been doing things more intentionally, as per the examples I just gave, I feel like my life was mostly leading towards slow living. It was nice for a while. It was nice because honestly, when you graduate, life is not typically slow. Usually people graduating rush to start their careers, rush to, build their networks or do whatever they do. I'm kind of curious to see how this plays out. If it's necessary to have to rush as soon as you finish that part of your life. Because one thing that when I was in college, me and my friend always talked about was gap years and breaks and stuff. So she took a gap year between her graduating from high school and then going to college, because she was in her gap year, she became a certified makeup artist and worked salon studio and then decided going back into school. And it was always like this interesting thing. Not once did I ever think about having a gap year, but I'm kind of curious if gap years, because I know some people get worried like if they don't go to school right away that they won't go back. But I also think that having time for yourself, like a quote unquote gap year, gives you time to really figure out what you actually want and not be on autopilot. I am going to talk about being on autopilot more in its own episode, because there's so much things about being on autopilot that I don't think is mentioned enough in the self-care space and wellness space, but that's a different story. It's just the concept of not wanting to live on autopilot, you know? And I think gap years can do that. How I'm trying to think about this is I never took a gap year before going into college, and I kind of wonder if I did take a gap year, what would I have discovered about myself? Would I have tried to get a job? What activities would I do to fill my time? And if that would have impacted my decision on where I wanted to go or the major I wanted to go into. I spend my life getting at least good grades because I don't have a lot of extracurriculars. I was not, I suppose, like a super well-rounded student because sports wasn't my thing. And my school kind of lacked having a diverse set of activities, but we did have electives. So typically when I did electives, I was either in drama class, which tracks, it makes sense. Even though I consider myself a shy person or a slightly more soft-spoken person, that I actually really enjoyed drama class. And when I stopped doing drama class, it was 8th grade, and what I did instead for that elective, it was dance, and it was a new elective. And then I think for 9th grade and 10th grade, I did drama, and I think 11th and 12th grade, I did journalism as an elective. So, yeah. I didn't do much extracurriculars because electives kind of was scheduled in our day-to-day schedule. So I never did like after school things like clubs or anything like that, or before school things. My school did have sports, like I'm pretty sure they had things like bowling, tennis, golf. I think they had lacrosse. We had a boys baseball team, girls soccer team, of course, cheerleading, girls basketball, boys basketball. We never had football because our school is very small. So I was never like into activities during my development years. I kind of wonder if I took the time to explore a bit, if I would have made the same choices. Because obviously I only knew what I knew. I think that we all have that ingrained in us. We choose something from when we're a kid, and sometimes we either stick to that idea or branch off to things that are similar to it that we discover about ourselves. Like for me, from the time I was a kid, it was always I wanted to be a fashion designer. So then my, I guess, quote unquote plan or way of manifesting was I wanted to go to my specific middle school just until I could go to high school at a fashion school and then go to what was my college. And what ended up happening was I got accepted into the high school I wanted to. But when you have an overprotective parent and certain circumstances, she was not ready for me to take the train by myself. And honestly, I see why, because taking that train and doing that commute in college was very exhausting for me. So it was for the best that I didn't do it at that time, but maybe it was for the best. But anyways, So because of like that lack of exploration, I always felt like I was on autopilot, and I wanted to be a fashion designer. Then because I learned about my love of writing, it was always there because I always wrote with my friend that was in Hawaii, my quote unquote twin. Then I started to potentially explore like writing outside of the fan fiction space by blogging with my old best friend, and that's how it came to be. Like, I thought, okay, I like writing, I like beauty, I like fashion. Maybe I could just be like a fashion journalist. And that was my thought process. So it came time to select colleges. I did apply to other schools and got into other schools, but essentially I knew that where I wanted to go, which was the college I selected for myself years ago. And I thought I would just stay in my initial program, and I ended up not doing that because I learned there was more. And once your eyes get open like to the possibilities that there is more, because I know when you're on autopilot and taking life at a fast pace, then you kind of just stick to things or just do things because you think like, oh, I'm already on this track, so what's the point of doing something else? And then when you get into a position of slow living, not only are you taking activities in stride and being more intentional about what you do in your day-to-day, but also it gives you so much more time to think about if you're even enjoying what you're doing. And so with the information I gained in my slow living period, I kind of want to shift the focus in this upcoming season. Obviously, summer is, I know for a lot of people, is about the fun, the freedom, and for other people, they kind of lost their summer because they started working or they are doing certain things in the summer. In high school, I did that. It was summer was for working, and then summer weekends was for hanging out with friends. But essentially, work was my main focus. In the slowness, while it's beautiful and precious, and like, I know it's probably something, there's going to be times I wish for that. Like, I wish for things to slow down because I'm pretty sure I have in the past, and now I'm actually living in it. So it's kind of strange. But I just feel like it limits my growth, and not everyone is going to feel like that. So now I'm trying to shift into a season of intentionally living based off of what I learned. So what I've learned about myself is I like a variety of creating, whether it's more research based, whether it's more vocal. I just like the process of learning how to tell a story, and I like seeing how it unfolds. I like coming up with ideas. I like thinking of ways to execute the ideas. Like, everything about it makes me feel very fulfilled. But also, I realized I like making content that's more in an educational sense. The first time I learned that was with my last job, where I kind of made a financial wellness journal. But I enjoyed the process of coming up with the idea, thinking about what would be most helpful, and designing the template out. And then I was thinking about what I liked about being in school, and even though I don't like public speaking, I loved the process of making presentations. I loved putting them together. I loved coming up with ideas. Like, I kind of miss that. And it's just like all these like little things. And it just made me realize how detail orientated I guess I am as a person, and how creativity and the concept of teaching, those are the things, the skills I'm attracted to. Like, those are what I want to utilize in my life. There are also things that I want to build out and skills I want to develop. Like, I want to develop my communication skills more, which is exactly why in the process of creating, I'm communicating, But I also want to work on in-person communication, which is also one of the many reasons why volunteering seemed like a good idea. And plus the concept of helping other people and helping out community in the best way I could at the moment. Because you know what they say, like, for things you can't give your money to, you give your time. Sometimes you just gotta do something that you don't usually do. And choosing that for myself and having something to be excited about that I intentionally wanted to do just makes it feel right. And knowing what you want to shift to, like shifting seasons, everyone should have the time to think about what that looks like for them. I do think once you stay in a season too long, it creates like this stagnancy because then you get too used to it. And without some sense of challenges, it keeps you stagnant, bored, and sometimes unfulfilled. That's all for this episode. I'm so sorry there was so much rambling, but I do want to let you know that I have other ideas coming up. Autopilot will be its own episode. Self-trust will be its own episode. And I'm still coming into the works of the last one because I am trying to do the recordings so that I won't have to like miss a day or anything like that. I really want to be consistent with putting things out, but I also want to give myself more room for the activities I want to add into my life, and also give myself room to figure out how I want to create on other platforms, because now I feel like I got a handle on the podcast, I got a handle on the blog, and it's just YouTube that I'm just like feeling it's just not what I want it to be. And it's not more of the perfectionist in me, but I really want to push my creativity in terms of video making and really upgrade my skills in that. So, yeah. I'm going to skip what I'm grateful for because the whole concept of this episode was to kind of talk about how I was grateful for my slow living era and how it allows me to want to be more intentional in this upcoming season. So we're just going to jump right into the card pull and then we're going to end off. So for this episode, I actually pulled 2 cards from the moonology deck. I really wish it was the self-care deck, but I still can't find those cards. Okay, so the first card I pulled was It's Time to Release Negativity, which is full moon in Scorpio. It says, if you've been feeling paranoid and acting weird, take this card as a very direct message from the cosmos to stop it. Worrying yourself is pointless. It's time to release any negativity you have around the situation you're asking about. If someone has been unkind to you, perhaps it's time for you to release them. This card heralds an emotionally intense time since both the full moon and Scorpio themselves are both extremely intense. It's time for you to feel all your feelings. There could be some nastiness in the air when you pull this card. If that's the case, take it as a sign to move away from anyone or anything you feel is toxic. For some, however, this card is actually a different meaning. Your life can improve now if you make an effort. Use your magic. You have all you need inside you to bring about your desired results. Attune to the moon. Emote. It's better out than in. Additional meanings for this card. It's time to move from living fearfully to living joyfully. You're right to have your suspicions. Grudges are toxic. Let something go. The end of an argument. The teaching. The full moon in Scorpio has a sting in its tail. It can herald a vindictive end to a relationship. It can also be a time when we want to be good, but we're naughty. If you pull this card, no matter when, your dark side and your shadow self may be showing. The full moon in Scorpio is also a time of magic. If you were thinking of making some magic, this is your sign to do it. The next card is Emotions Are Running High, Supermoon. This card suggests that the answer to whatever you're asking is writ large like the silvery full moon set against the velvety night sky. If you're wondering how successful something is going to be, such as a job or relationship, the answer is very. To use common parlance, the answer to your question may well be that it's under your nose. This card is about being larger than life, being special, and bursting with energy that you can tune into and work with. You can expect plenty of good things and a positive outcome when this card comes up, but you may find there's a lot of emotions to deal with too. There's also a sense that the opportunities around whatever you're asking about don't come along every day, so take action. Attune to the moon. Success is close. I just must trust. Additional meanings for this card. A resolution to your question is closer than you may think. Don't ignore the obvious. Something exciting lies ahead. Make sure you don't blow events out of proportion. Speak to the goddess. Ask for her assistance. The teaching. A supermoon is a new or full moon that takes place when the moon is at its closest point to the earth during its monthly orbit, an event known as perigee. If it's a full moon, the moon appears around 14% bigger at this time. The moon is known as the queen of emotions, and if you draw the supermoon card, regardless of when you do this, you can expect your feelings to be more highly charged. Even though this episode was more about what I feel is right for me, but I do encourage people to take a look at the season they're in and make the shift for the season to whatever feels right for them. And I think whenever you want to make a shift, it is going to be very emotional. They are both very emotional cards. While I think the second card was more positive, but I think the first card shows us that we may have like resistance or negativity around where we're at, and that's why we probably need to make the shift in the first place and release it so we can have, some clarity, some success, more opportunities, such as with the supermoon. And regardless, it's going to be emotional when you decide to shift seasons. So with all that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode and stay tuned for all the upcoming episodes that I'm working on. And I would really appreciate it if you like, comment, subscribe if you're on YouTube. And if you're not, if you're listening to where you get your podcast, it would mean the world to me if you could follow the podcast. I'm still trying to figure out if people could review it or leave comments. But because I use something to post on multiple platforms, I'm kind of confused on how to make sure everything is in order, because I know some people could comment on podcast episodes, but I haven't figured that out yet. I hope y'all enjoyed this episode. Have a good day, evening, or night, and I will see you for the next one. Okay, bye.